Good afternoon, church family, or good evening, as it might be. I want to share with you what I've been doing on Wednesday evenings, Wednesday afternoons, just a little bit of heart-to-heart talk from the lessons I've learned in ministry, especially on leadership. Now, this isn't a sermon. It's not a theological exhortation or anything like that. You don't have to agree with me. These are just things that have been important to me. Now, I'm reading from 2 Timothy chapter 1, and it goes like this. This is Paul, an older pastor, speaking to Timothy, his young protege. And he says, I thank God whom I serve as my forefathers did, with a clear conscience, as night and day I constantly remember you in my prayers. Recalling your tears, I long to see you so that I might be filled with joy. I have been reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and now I am persuaded lives in you also. For this reason I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God, which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For God did not call us to a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power, of love, and of self-discipline. I just want to share two things tonight, or this afternoon, with you. The first is leaders are not born in a vacuum. Leaders are made. Leaders come on the coattails of other leaders, or on the bootstraps of other leaders. And so whoever you are, at whatever age you are, as a growing Christian disciple, as a leader in Jesus Christ, find someone that has been there ahead of you and follow them. Not obey them, follow them like they're some kind of guru, but learn from them. When I used to be in Promise Keepers, they used to say that we men needed at least 3 other men in our lives. Somebody that is older than us, that has already been on the road, that can give us advice. Somebody younger than us, that is following the same road we're on, that we can give our advice to. Somebody alongside of us that doesn't think we're great, so that we can get a realistic view of ourselves. I think back as a young ministerial candidate going to college. I think of Brother Richard Schutz, Dick Schutz, just a great soul winner for Christ. I think of Pastor T.E. Davis, one of my early pastors, was a conference superintendent. I think of Louis Seifert, experienced pastor. I think of Al and Viv Welsh, that pastored a church just a few miles from my church, and they were near the end of their journey as I was at the beginning of my journey. I could just think Jim Eldridge, Kendall Mayhew. I can think of so many pastors. I'm probably forgetting to name some of the ones that are just plain for me. I should be naming. Especially, probably the biggest of them all in my life was Robert Goldsboro, my uncle. He was one of my favorite people in the world. All of these men are gone now, but I used to see him at conference. He was a mentor to me. You need a mentor. It's not enough just to gather together around you a bunch of friends your own age and try to kind of mumble along into the future. In kind of a cumbersome way, is the word I was looking for. But you need somebody that has been on the journey. I remember Bishop Myron Boyd passed away several years ago. His widow was in her 80s, I think. Must have been close to that while I was in college. She went back to college and became one of my classmates. This lady just had wisdom everywhere. And one day she gave me a set of books that had belonged to her late husband, and I saw his markings in the side, and I still have them in my library. Which brings me to the second point today. The first, you find someone that's been on the journey. It may be they don't want to mentor you in a formal way. Just build a friendship. I learned so much playing Scrabble with these men I've mentioned. And the second is, never stop learning. I've got to be candid with you, especially if you happen to be an older Christian right now. As a pastor growing up through the decades, I've often seen people that had power in the local church. They had respectability in the local church. They had a prestige. They were prestigious in the local church, and they used that power sometimes. But they themselves fell short of godliness. Many younger pastors are disenchanted when they see their heroes fall. And I think one of the reasons is because they don't continue to grow. You see, the Christian I am at 63 is not the Christian that I was at 33, and not the Christian that I was at 13. If I was 63 years old today or 64 years old today and I was still living with the faith of a 13 or 14-year-old, I would be stunted. I remember that I was already married before I went into ministry. I didn't have the opportunity to go straight into seminary, and so I went on another track, and I finished up college, and after I finished up college, I took some extra courses that it took for our ordination and licensing, and it wasn't until years later that I had the opportunity to go back to grad school. And when I went back, I had no idea that I might ever be teaching or doing anything else. I had no idea that it would ever involve a change to a different church or a larger church, that I would ever make any kind of money. I didn't go back to school to make money, to get a better job, a better career. I went back because even as I was coming into middle age, there was something inside of me that just felt stunted. I didn't think I was as mature as I needed to be. It takes some soul searching to look at yourself when you're in your 40s or maybe 40 years old, and to tell yourself honestly that you are not as mature as you need to be. So I went back to grad school. I went back for the purpose of growing up. And then another decade or so later, I had kind of a stress collapse in the ministry, which is not a secret to anybody that knows me. And here I was now in my early 50s, and I thought to myself, what am I going to do? I was newly retired, or at least on sick leave, and I thought, I'll go back to school. I'll go back for another master's. The school has been helpful to me in the past, and it will be again. And so I went back and ended up in the job I'm in now. I could never have seen that coming. And now here I am, older, probably nearing the end of another retirement. And I think to myself, I don't know what the future will hold, but I don't want to stagnate. I want to grow, just like you need to grow. And part of what I'm doing right now is stretching me to just be candid and open about my life story week after week, and helping me to grow into my next level of life too, just like you're growing. So if you're a Christian leader, I don't know if I said it in a good way. I feel like I'm just kind of tripping over myself today. I had an old pastor when I was first starting. He was just a few years older than me. And he used to say that he got his tongue wrapped around his eye teeth and couldn't see what he was saying. That may be me, but if you're a Christian, you're a disciple of Christ. If you're a disciple of Christ, you're in it for the real thing, for the long haul. You're in it to run with all the might you can. If you're in it to give your best to it, you need to find somebody else that's a little older than you, a little more experienced, that you can learn from, and you need to keep on learning. Keep on growing. Because if you can't grow, you can't help others to grow. So that's my lesson for tonight. Here's an older Pastor Paul speaking to a young protege, Timothy, and reminding Timothy of his mother and his grandmother and how they invested themselves in his life. And I just remember all these great people that have invested in my life. Well, I hope you have a good week ahead. And we're about halfway through the week. I hope you find someone around, an older, wiser Christian that you can learn from. And I hope you are growing in the faith. May God bless you.